regular meeting. It's about 5:40 p.m. on March 9th, 2021. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Burning?
Yes, Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Burning?
Present.
2 trustees are present.
Can we stand now for a pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start with our public hearing on the 2021 permanent appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Burning. As the board is aware, this time every year is when we look to adopt our permanent appropriations. For those who aren't aware, we adopt actually a temporary budget or appropriation in late December, and we don't adopt our permanent until March. Mainly that's because we're waiting to see what our carryover revenues and numbers were from the previous year. So as indicated, this is our budgetary cycle. It actually starts in July with the tax budget, which is a document that we utilize to determine actually carryovers and anticipated revenues from the previous year and into the new year. Then it moves into September, where we actually ask the county to certify our tax budget. Then in October, we authorize the tax levy to the auditor. Essentially what that means is we're authorizing them to collect the taxes as previously requested. And we indicate that those revenues are necessary for normal operational expenditures. Then, as indicated in late December, early January, we adopt our temporary, and then to where we are today, where we're adopting our permanent appropriations. In 2020, our permanent appropriations were just under $35 million, close to $34.5 million. And in this year, we're right there. We're at $34.2 million this year, which is about less than a 1%, 0.84% increase over last year. You know, let me go back just for a second. When you look at this, I think it truly doesn't tell the story in its entirety, in that in townships, we don't separate out our operational from our capital expenditures. So within this appropriation of just shy of $35 million, it includes any capital expenditures, again, as well as operational, but more importantly, it includes any grants we receive. So, you know, typically you look at a budget and you think, well, wow, they're spending, you know, the same amount, less than, or more money than the previous year. Well, when you really look at it, our budget in particular, we include any grants. So if we're lucky enough to receive a lot of grants in a previous or a subsequent year, it's going to throw off our overall appropriations to make it look like it may be significantly or drastically different than the previous year. But in this case, we're looking to appropriate similar amount of grants that we received last year, and then we're, again, just a slight increase from the previous year. If you look at it broken out by department, general government is what we refer to as sort of the administration, some code enforcement, which includes property maintenance, zoning, and then mainly general government is obviously the general administration, but human resources, finance, things of that nature, and it also encompasses our arts center, our events communications, things like that. Public works, obviously, I think is self-explanatory. That includes all of our infrastructure related expenses, as well as those related to maintaining roads, snow removal, parks and recreation, things of that nature. Police obviously is encompassing the largest portion of the budget and does in every year, mainly because of the amount of personnel that is necessary to run that department and adequately respond to services throughout the township, and then fire EMS second. Again, the two departments with the largest amount of personnel because they are the most service-driven departments that are respond to the most calls a year. I think police is in excess of 25,000, and then fire, when you combine fire and EMS, you're approaching what, 8,000 or 9,000 a year, Chief? So looking at the department differences between the previous years, so last year we were just shy of $4 million in general government. Again, we're just below that this year. The difference really there is just some one-time capital expenditures and equipment purchases that we made for our art center and the banquet hall in the back. And also last year, because of leap year, we had 27 pays in a year as opposed to 26. So personnel costs are slightly below this year than they were last year. Looking at public works, police, and fire, very similar to last year, just slight increases in each of those departments. Again, personnel costs go up every year, so you're noticing an increase there. And I think it's important to note that this is called appropriations for a reason. We're simply earmarking money, setting it aside, because in a township, we cannot spend or expend money unless it's been lawfully appropriated. It doesn't mean that we're going to necessarily spend it, but if we're going to spend it, it has to be first appropriated. And because the appropriation process is required by resolution, you always want to appropriate money in the event that you think you may spend it, even though you may not, at the beginning of the year. So that's why we appropriate generally more than we end up spending. So like last year, we spent 78% of what we actually appropriated. So again, while budgets may fluctuate from year to year, our average in terms of actual spending is somewhere between 80 to 85% every year. Last year, we spent a little less, mainly because we held back on doing some projects because we were unsure what the economy and the revenue was going to look like due to the pandemic. Looking at revenue from the last 3 years, pretty consistent throughout the different funds. The general fund generally is a little more volatile now because of this joint economic development zone, and we're including income tax in there, so that fluctuates a little more than property tax typically does. Public works revenue funds are pretty stable. They're generally all driven by property tax, and some motor vehicle license and gas tax is involved in that. Police and fire are almost always the same because they are 100% generally levy driven. So, and because when a millage amount is passed, the revenue generated by that levy cannot exceed what it was in the day that it was passed. It generally stays the same. Why you see those spikes in 20 was because police and fire thankfully received some CARES Act funding through the federal government that allowed them to fund some of their response and expense related to responding to the pandemic. So you see an increase in revenue there in those departments beyond what they typically would be. And the ambulance and EMS fund, that is EMS billing, and that typically stays right around the $900,000 to $950,000 a year mark, so that pretty much stays flat as well. So really nothing out of the ordinary, again, other than that CARES Act funding that was received last year for police and fire. As a summary of some of the things that highlight in the general fund, there's a $33,000 decrease in personnel costs from 20. Again, that's related to the reduction of one pay period from last year. Additionally, we're looking at about $65,000 in capital improvement projects. That's just normal maintenance and upkeep and equipment repair for the various buildings associated with the general fund. There's about $83,000 in park improvements that are planned. There's $275,000 in there for road salt. Initially, back in late December, we anticipated only having to spend $150,000 to adequately fill our salt dome from what we thought we were going to have. And then, unfortunately, January happened. And we spent a lot of time on the roads in 2.5 weeks removing snow. And as a result, used a lot more salt than we anticipated at the end of last year. Therefore, in order to get our supply back to where we like to have it going into next fall, we're going to have to expend about $125,000 more to purchase salt than we anticipated. And then there's just shy of $1.9 million coming out of the general fund for street resurfacing. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. In the Public Works Department, there's $200,000 toward pavement preservation. And again, Public Works is made up of motor vehicle license fees, gasoline tax, road and bridge, and road district are both property tax driven revenue. There's $200,000 associated with pavement preservation. What that means is it's not road rehabilitation. It's going back and taking care of roads that we've recently repaved, basically putting a rejuvenator on those, and just to make sure that those projects that were completed 3 to 5 years ago stay in a good condition and extend the life of those new streets. We have about just shy of $400,000 allocated for storm sewer repairs, $80,000 for sidewalk repair, and $50,000 for street sweeping. We actually contract that service out, and they make 2 or 3 different trips to the entire township. Two. And when you have 400 streets and almost 100 lane miles of road, it is a significant expense. Looking at the police district fund, we are showing just right around $300,000 for 911 communication center fees. What a lot of people don't realize that every time you call 911, we get charged from the county for that. It used to be $15 per call. They have reduced it. However, not knowing exactly what will happen at the county level, we went ahead and appropriated an adequate amount to make sure that we cover those expenses, but we do anticipate that to be substantially less than that for 2020. There's $45,000 in it to purchase actually 1 cruiser this year. That's simply a placeholder in case we need to purchase it. We're not planning on it, but you never know what will happen. And then overall, we're looking at a slight 2.2% increase over last year's appropriations, again, primarily due to personnel costs increasing over the last previous year. In the fire and EMS fund, we're looking at just shy of $140,000 for tools and equipment. That's just general things that the fire department needs to operate. Things break, obviously, throughout the year. So we've set aside money to replace those tools and equipment. Just shy of $150,000 for facility repairs and maintenance. You can imagine a facility the size of the fire headquarters here, as well as a secondary fire station over in Burlington, does take a lot of abuse throughout the year when you have in excess of 100 employees coming in and out of there throughout 12 months. So there is some money set aside to make repairs and maintenance of those buildings. There is $287,000 appropriated to replace an existing ambulance. We run 4 squads 24/7, 365 days a year. They take a lot of abuse in order to maintain that piece of equipment so that they're ready when that tone drops and they have to make a response to your house. We like to have at least 4 squads and a 5th as a spare in the event that one goes down. We generally replace squads every 4 to 5 years, and this year is the time when we will be replacing one of the squads and move that one to the spare. Overall, it's about a 4.2% increase from the previous year appropriations, again, mainly due to personnel costs from the previous year. Infrastructure spending. As we talked, we have about 1.85 coming out of the general fund, but overall, we anticipate spending just shy of $4 million this year in infrastructure. That includes both the amount that the township is spending, the amount that we've received in grants from the Ohio Public Works Commission, as well as what the township is spending on the pavement preservation, the storm sewer repair, and the sidewalk repair, and the pavement preservation treatments. Last year, we spent just shy of $1.8 million, so, and in 2 years prior to that, just shy of $3 million. So overall, in the last 5 years, we've completely resurfaced 95 streets of the 400 we have and spent in excess of $15 million on road repair in Springfield Township. Which, when you say that you've repaved roughly 25% of the roads in your community in 5 years, that's unheard of in local government, and I'm not sure that many communities can say that. When you look at the projections in the general fund, and this is my Bible, what I live by on a day-to-day basis, so every time I look at expenditures, I always think 3, 4, 5 years ahead and what it does to the budget. The line at the top really shows you how much money we have available in that fund. The line at the bottom shows you our anticipated expenditures. Ideally, you want those 2 lines as far apart as possible, right? When the lines start getting close together, that means your expenditures are getting close to your available revenue. That's not a good line intersect. You don't want those ever to cross, especially in a fund where there's not a lot of opportunity to increase revenue. So what this shows me is that we need to increase revenue or decrease expenditures. And the board understands this about these projections. Generally, I propose something, I present something that's very conservative in terms of revenue and very bullish in terms of expenditures, just so that we're never caught off guard. And I think it's important to note that we're not like the federal government. We cannot deficit spend. So we have to have, and we can't print money. There's no printing press in the basement of this building. So we have to make sure that our revenues are always adequate to account for our expenditures. And while this looks like it's getting close in 2025, I fully anticipate, again, remember, those anticipatory expenditures that I'm showing in 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 assume that we're spending close to 90% of appropriations, when I know that we're going to spend probably at least 10% less than that. So I fully anticipate that next year those lines will be a little further apart, and that we will continue to make headway in that regard. But again, it's just a good practice to be conservative as possible so that you're never in a situation where you're blindsided by anything. The police district fund, if you've seen this chart from last year, it basically showed these lines intersecting next year. Luckily, we were able to, and the voters were so gracious to pass a police and fire levy in November of last year, which has helped this graph look a lot better than it did last year. So you see those lines getting closer together 5 years out. Again, that's not uncommon. When you have a levy-driven department like police and fire, you're generally bringing in more revenue in the beginning than you need, because you know at some point your expenditures are going to match or exceed your available appropriations, your annual revenue, that is, and then you're going to be drawing down on that reserve that you build up in the first few years of that levy. So this is right on target of where I thought we would be by passing the levy, and it should stay this way for the next at least 4 to 5 years, and hopefully well beyond that. We're anticipating getting at least 8 to 10 years out of the most recent levy, like we did the previous levy that was passed 11 years ago prior to this past November. When you look at the fire district, similar situation, except you're like, whoa, wait a minute, those lines are intersecting in 2025. That isn't a surprise. Even though we passed the levy last year, that isn't a surprise to me, because back in 2011, the fire department received a 1 mil levy that was approved by the voters for a 5-year period of time. That was renewed in 2016 for 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and be collected through 22 as well. So in 23, the fire department will see a $500,000 reduction in their revenue unless that 1 mil is renewed again. So probably at the end of 22, the Board of Trustees are going to have to make a determination whether or not to put that on the ballot. The beautiful thing about it is it will not increase your taxes. It'll just maintain them the way they are now, and have been since obviously the most recent levy was passed in November. So it won't increase your taxes. It'll keep it the same. But because the way that levy was passed in 2011, it has to be renewed every 5 years. So in order to prevent those lines from intersecting like that, which cannot happen, and we have to have a structurally balanced budget here in the township. So cuts will have to be made, or that 1 mil levy will have to be renewed in 22 for another 5 years. So again, some of the things to consider as we look at the budget and as the board looks to approve the permanent appropriations. What is the sustainability of the fire district funds due to that expiring 1 mil levy, and that was initially passed in 2011? What are we going to do about infrastructure spending and impacts to the general fund? The general fund cannot withstand spending $2 million a year in infrastructure spending. So how much we spend on roads is really going to be dictated by how much income tax revenue or JEDS revenue we received on an annual basis. Can we find alternative revenue sources like the permissive MVL fee that was passed last year? And continuation of our assessment process that we've done now in 18 different neighborhoods by sharing the cost with taxpayers beyond the grants we receive, the taxes that you already pay, in addition to the assessments to help get these roads passed and resurfaced. Then in the general fund, again, we just have to look at, in order to prevent those lines from intersecting, or, we have to reduce infrastructure spending at some point in time or increase revenue through some alternative means. So those are the things we're constantly working on to try and make sure that we can maintain that structurally balanced budget that by law we have to have. I know that was a lot in a short amount of time, so at this point, I'll be happy to entertain any questions of the board or the public if they would have any.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you, Chris. We'll go on to the approval of minutes. I thought we approved all these minutes, but okay. Over-
We did not,
Really?
truly.
Okay, approval of the minutes from our November 10th, 2020 meeting, our November 24th, 2020 meeting, regular work session, December 7th, 2020 bid opening, December 8th, 2020 regular meeting, December 29th, 2020 regular work session and annual organizational meeting, January 12th, 2021 regular meeting, January 25th, 2021 special meeting, January 26th, 2021 regular work session, February 9th, 2021 public hearing and regular meeting, February 19th, 2021 bid opening, February 23rd, 2021 regular work session, and our March 2nd, 2021 bid opening. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Burning, if we could have a financial fiscal officer report?
Yes, Mr. Burning, for the month ending February 28th, 2021, the township expenditures were $1,868,453.31, and receipts were $658,970.28. That gives us an ending cash balance of $19,416,774.56. This includes obligations for expenditures, payroll, regular operating costs, ongoing capital improvement projects, and investments. What I request is a motion to approve the receipts, warrants, payroll expenditures, updated and current revenue reports for the period ending February 28th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and I just want everyone to know that our financial reports are available for viewing here at the offices during regular business hours or on our website 24/7. Thank you, Mr. Burning.
Thank you, Mr. Burning. Mr. Gilbert, action items and discussion items.
Thank you, sir. We have a few action items tonight. The first is to approve an addition to the caterer list for the Grove Banquet Hall. I'm asking for a motion to approve Magnificent Morsels Catering pending final legal review.
So moved.
Seconded?
I just want to say I did complete that last night.
So you-
So we're good.
We don't have to pen the legal
You're
review then.
not pending anymore.
No longer
Perfect.
pending.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, we have looking at setting a date and time for a dangerous property hearing at 2046 Second Avenue. There is a resolution on the agenda tonight to declare that property dangerous, as the board is aware and has observed the dangerous conditions at that property. I would request that we set that date and time for April 13th at 5 p.m. prior to the April regular meeting, if that works for everyone.
That's fine. Christie?
It works for me, yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Looking at the personnel update, we had quite a bit of activity in the fire department, a lot of part-time hiring. Christian Clark, part-time EMT firefighter, February 8th, 2021. Actually, all of these are February 8th, so I'll just save myself some oxygen. Nick Clems, part-time EMT firefighter. Brandon Norman, part-time medic firefighter. Evan Reedy, part-time EMT firefighter. Gabriel Wakeman, part-time EMT firefighter. And Brandon West, part-time EMT firefighter. Once again, all date of hire February 8th, 2021. In the police department, we did have the resignation of Franklin Mcpherson. Date of resignation is February 19th, 2021. In the public works department, we did have the hiring of Caleb Laird, part-time 1820 laborer, a date of hire February 10th, 2021. And then in the Arts Community Center, we had the resignation of Tikwa Irving. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Guest services resignation of January 28th of 2021. That concludes my personal update. Now I'll turn it over to Kim for community events and programs.
Thank you. We have one virtual event coming up. It's Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park is presenting Dragons Love Tacos. It's a professionally recorded production. Tickets are for free and available on our Arts Connect website for viewing April the 30th through May 2nd. Our larger events of things that we're kind of used to will start to come back in July.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, well, go ahead.
Too soon to mention about the
The fundraiser?
correct.
So Arts Connect is started actually today. We launched our first big fundraiser. We are trying to raise $14,000, and it is to purchase a learning kitchen. It is a mobile cart unit. It's one of the things that all of the Arts Connect board members were kind of striving for when we did renovations, but the space and funding really didn't provide for a learning kitchen environment over at the Arts Center. So the cart is something that will be mobile, that we can take into any classroom, and it has a stove, has an oven, it has a sink on it. Everything is meets to code from the health department side of things. This is something that one of our board members was a passion project for her. She recently passed away in January, so we're doing this as a legacy project. And we're also including in that $14,000, $1,000 of that will be set up as a scholarship for cooking programs for the Springfield Township Stay program, which is the project that the police department runs with youth teens, and we will be funding the cooking portion of their program as long as they have it.
And how can people go about donating?
Donating can be done online on the Arts Connect webpage. It can also be made over the phone, 522-2108, and we have paper forms for donations as well, so people can fill those out and send them in.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm excited about this.
Me too.
Thank you, Kim. And anybody who has not checked out the Arts Center, formerly known as the Senior Center, there's a lot of really interesting classes going on over there. Everything's brand new, and whether it's wood shop or pottery or
For yoga, I took yoga on Saturday.
yoga, there's all kinds of things going on. So if you want to get, we do have a pamphlet that'll tell you all the different types of things you can do over there. I think you'd be very excited about some of the things they're doing over there, and it doesn't have to, it's not for seniors, it's for everybody. So you're all welcome to join her. Thanks, Kim.
Good point, Mr. Burning. The board has copies of the departmental activity reports, so unless there are any questions of those, that concludes my portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. So next we have resolutions. First resolution is number 24-2021, declaring motor vehicles located in public or private property in Springfield Township, Hamilton County, Ohio, to be junk motor vehicles pursuant to revised code 505.173 and ordering the removal of such vehicles pursuant to resolution number 80-2012 and revised code 505.871. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next is resolution number 25-2021, authorizing sale by internet auction of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property in the fire department. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next is resolution number 26-2021, declaring a dangerous property condition at 2046 Second Avenue. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have resolution number 27-2021, declaring nuisances pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 505.87 at various listed properties within Springfield Township and authorizing statutory actions necessary to abate the nuisances. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
And Ms. Davis, do we have any old business?
I do not. Mr.
New
Burning.
business?
No new business items.
Okay, we've come to the part where we have citizens' participation. If you're interested in speaking to the board, please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and we'd be happy to hear what you have to say. Is that a no? Okay, well then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Although you don't have anything to say, thank you for coming and welcome. Feel free to come back anytime. Motion, so moved, adjourned.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting
Meeting's
adjourned.
adjourned.